College Football Inquirer with Ross Dellenger and Steven Godfrey. I am Andy Staples. Gentlemen, we just watched a breathtaking Saturday of college football. Okay, maybe it wasn't so breathtaking, but the game in Eugene was highly entertaining. USC Oregon in a matchup with Big Ten title implications, maybe, depending on what Michigan and Ohio State do, with definite college football playoff implications. And Oregon, I'd say, well, I don't want to say restored the natural order, but they definitely showed us where they are and where USC is.
I think that's absolutely correct, sir. This is a very physical, very complete football team. We were talking to our producer, TJ, before the show started. The second USC touchdown, the sort of like highest man wins in zone, the tiptoe grab, right? Wonderful display of athleticism from a USC program that's not quite ready for prime time. And then I believe the next score was the sort of display of Oregon's complete team, which was special teams touchdown, and then the physicality kind of took hold. I often wonder, Andy, because we talked a lot about USC and where they are on the schedule. I wonder if people nationwide really understand how physical this Oregon football team can be. That this is not the gimmick of the aughts or this millennial nonsense with the uniforms.
But, Steven, they're on the West Coast. How could they possibly have large, fast people who hit you hard?
Yeah,
they play with all them funny helmets defense, on, right? Paul.
Yeah, they can't be physical out there. You know, we talked about it. I know in the pod for the old pod for a few years about how like Dan Lanning and before him Mario Cristobal was like building Oregon into this SEC like sort of physicality, minded lines and defensive front, and that like came through more than ever, right? I mean, USC couldn't move the ball at all, running the ball on the ground. I mean, they were just kind of swamped there, and it was just like you'd expect from a team whose coach sort of, and previous coach even, sort of geared all the recruiting to getting big, fast, physical up front,
Well, and the thing was, they were always great at getting skill guys. I mean, going back to Mike Bellotti, Chip Kelly, they were fantastic at getting skill guys. Their struggle was finding those difference makers inside. They've had them. Haloti Ngata is one of the greatest interior defensive linemen to ever play. DeForest Buckner was awesome. But it was like they would have one of those guys and not a bunch of those guys. Exactly. And now they have a bunch of... And the thing is, you look at the injuries they had on the offensive line, which they overcame. They had their fourth tackle in at one point. They were still moving the ball. And here's the thing, and this is to my greater point about this. The skill guys. Who was the best athlete on the field?
The tight end?
Is Kenyon Sadiq. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
USC... which is supposed to have the best athletes in America, which, we can argue about Lincoln Riley's recruiting later. But Kenyon Sadiq was the best, most freakish athlete on the field, and it wasn't close.
It's almost like you got to have both, y'all. Sorry, it's almost like you can outfit yourself with $4 million quarterback. Shout out Miami. And build a wonderful wide receiver room and have athletes and have future draft picks that are going to garner attention. But you got to get big, you got to get ugly and muddy, to Andy's point. But all of the bigger plays, every time I looked up and there was a chunk pass play for Oregon, it's off of play action. They're being honest. It's a run-based offense. Like, this is succeeding, Andy, to your point, because they are not afraid to line up and push. And I always, I feel like every time I talk about Oregon, I go back to that 2014 national title game or January 2015, where Ohio State came in and beat probably the most talented Oregon team ever to that point by just winning the lines. Not doing anything particularly impressive other than just winning line play all night. And you saw the discrepancy. You saw the difference between national title caliber and then what Oregon was. And it feels like everything they've done since, even the Mario years, has been a referendum on that.
And they were missing, I think, their top three, certainly two of their top four wide receivers in the game. And
if we're counting Evan Stewart, who's been out all year,
you
couldn't tell.
No, you can't. They just seems to plug and play. And now it feels like to me, and I think we're going to get into the playoff picture in depth later, but like Oregon's in the position that kind of that Ohio State was last year, where they could be that, that 6 or 7 seed and not have to go play the Big Ten championship game. It's crazy to say that they wouldn't want to go play that, but you wouldn't. I think they want a home game.
Oh, they need to heal up.
6 or 7 seed.
They are the biggest Ohio State fans in the world this week. They do not want to Michigan to win, upset the apple cart, and Oregon go to the Big Ten championship. Because why would you want to play Indiana again now when maybe you could play Indiana again later when you've healed up?
Real fast, the knock on Oregon when we were doing preseason stuff was they didn't have the transfer quarterback, right? They didn't have the hot name that we thought about in August. They just had Dante Moore. They just had a guy who had been in the system for a year. That's paid out pretty nicely, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he looks very comfortable in that offense. And I always thought it was interesting the way Dante Moore handled everything, because for those who don't know the history of Dante Moore, he's a commitment to Oregon in the class of 2023. He flips at the last second and signs with UCLA, probably because there was immediate playing time available. He winds up starting a few games at UCLA in 2023 for Chip Kelly. It's not great. It doesn't look that good. He then goes back in the portal, and there were people who wanted to grab him to make him their starter immediately. He elects to go to Oregon knowing he was going to have to sit behind Dylan Gabriel a year. Did it consciously. And I thought that was interesting because I don't think many 19, 20-year-olds would make that decision.
It's good recruiting. I'll defer to the Oregon staff and the messaging that they're putting out there that they're able to convince him of that. By the way, we're talking about the Big Ten championship, and we're going to talk all about the scenario. Still got to go to Seattle. You are banged up. Still got to go to a serious rivalry game where they, too, will enjoy thumping. I do think Oregon's the better team, and they should hold serve, but this is not a gimme. This is not like going into the Civil War.
Can I give you, gentlemen, a Dan Lanning stat?
Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
He's lost 6 games at Oregon. Do you know how many of them were to teams that aren't in the top 10?
1.
Well, hang on.
Right.
He's lost 6 games. 2 were to Washington in the Penix DeBoer season.
That same year, yeah. Three of them actually were to Kalen DeBoer Washington teams.
You can actually count all of his losses if I have enough time, because then the loss last year in the Rose Bowl to to Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
So just what is the unranked team?
What is the unranked?
There isn't an unranked team. I just said outside the top 10.
Yeah.
The only other loss was to that really good Oregon State team in 2022 that was number 17. But that team ended up winning, I believe, 11 games. So
ask
at least 10
went.
Yeah. So that's it. Like, he doesn't lose these games. We talk about like the James Franklin thing of he doesn't lose against the teams he's not supposed to. Like, Dan Lanning really doesn't.
Yeah, and this was like, look at their schedule. We talked about it, I think, earlier. They can't control it, right? They scheduled Oklahoma State, who's been an 8, 9, 10-win team for, most of the last 15, 20 years. So they can't control that they fell off. They can't control that Penn State fell off. But you look at how important this USC game was, and it was their only win over a ranked team so far, I think. I believe the Iowa game, and Iowa's not ranked, right? They're 7, I think they're 7-4 right now. They might
wind up ranked if they
might wind up ranked. Yeah. But
Ross,
the bottom line is they lost this game, and there would have been a real argument of they're not making the playoffs.
I started flipping around in the fourth when they had a 2-possession lead, and I started thinking about Oklahoma State, and I checked in because we kind of have to serve narrative masters on the show.
Are you the only person in the world who watched the UCF Oklahoma State game?
Yeah. I am a dirtbag. We've established this. But we serve top-line narratives because that's our job. It's kind of what we're asked to do. I was like, man, how bad is Oklahoma State this year? I mean, like, they fired Gundy. We moved on. Boys, like, I track everything in my Phil Steele because that's a way of, like, remembering the other 100 teams that we don't talk about every week. They have not won since opening weekend.
Yeah.
They are buckshot. This for Oregon. I'm not here to talk about Oklahoma State, by the way. For Oregon, this is disastrous. It's not something you could have predicted. You might have thought with the roster that Oklahoma State flipped going into Oregon, like, that's not going to look great because it's going to be a 6 or 7 win team this year. No, they are one of the worst teams in the Power 4.
Yeah.
That sucks for Oregon.
So the question is, and it depends on what happens elsewhere, but if Oregon does stumble at Washington, and Washington certainly got some weapons, especially offensively, do they get in with the schedule? I don't know.
Yeah, it would have been tricky. It would have been very similar to Indiana last season because Indiana had a schedule that looked good on paper at the beginning of the season. And then when you looked at it at the end of the season, you're like, oh, it wasn't very good. But as long as you're 11-1, it doesn't matter. They feel pretty good about that. So they do need to win this game. This game's obviously very important for those who've not really experienced Oregon football, haven't been to Eugene. The Washington rivalry is huge.
Yeah.
It is probably bigger than the Oregon State rivalry. It is the game that they circle on the calendar, and the hatred is real. So I think it'll be fine in terms of being ready for the game. Obviously, Jedd Fisch doing a good job at Washington. They possibly, if they were to win this game, they'd be 9-3, but they could be 8-4 this year after a complete rebuild last year. So we will see what happens there. Let us transition. We'll just move across the country. Let's go to the middle of the country. Oklahoma beats Missouri in what I would term a defensive struggle.
That was a Bob Stoops special, baby. Come on,
Oklahoma did make a couple of big offensive plays. That the one touchdown, I believe, is Satania, where he caught it and did all the work. But
yeah, that shallow thing crosser.
Yeah, but it was a huge win for Oklahoma because now they just have to beat LSU. And Godfrey, I'm gonna throw out another game that I may have been the only person who watched any of. Okay. Did you watch any of the Western Kentucky LSU game?
Yeah, I watched the last fourth quarter of it.
Does quad box count?
Yeah.
And I did not have the audio going. Yeah. Because that was more of a, and Ross, I'm guessing you did the same thing. You're kind of like, for those of you on video, you're kind of like, oh, I'm going to keep that on in the corner in case,
in the fourth quarter. Yeah. It was
something spicy. Yeah. Like that. Oh, no, that
and lo and behold, Godfrey, I tune in, and within a few minutes, Western Kentucky scoops a fumble and takes it like 80 yards to pull within 13-10, and then kicks an onside kick. Didn't get it, but yeah, I mean, the LSU. I was getting texts from people in Tiger Stadium like, "This is the worst offense that we've had in like 60 years."
This is a long way of me saying I'm not sure Oklahoma is going to allow another point until the playoff.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering where you're going with this.
You could see that. You could absolutely see this been being 17-0 final score.
How many bad games can we get into this show today? It does feel like we're wrapping that one up. Unlike, we don't have a name for Washington, Oregon. It doesn't have a name, but unlike Washington, Oregon, that one feels like a little bit more of a foregone conclusion. And Andy, I think you were the first to ID this back when we were previewing Oklahoma Auburn, that this can be at times one of the preeminent fronts in all of college football on defense. And it feels a little, now some of this is informed by the Mateer injury, midseason, losing Red River. They kind of dipped mid, and now they are coming back. Honestly, maybe stronger than they were early season. They look fantastic.
This is the best front seven in college football, and it's the deepest front seven in college football. And so as long as they are terrorizing the opposing quarterback, Oklahoma has a chance. And I think so the teams that have the best offensive lines are the ones that have that can control a game against Oklahoma. It's actually shocking that Texas did it the way it did. But if you have a great offensive line, you've got a really good chance because you keep your quarterback somewhat upright and you're going to score some points. Oklahoma's offense is not that scary. So really it comes down to that. But this is a team now that is in great position to make the playoff because that win against Alabama is huge. It sets them up. Now, if Alabama were to lose the Iron Bowl, I don't know if it buoys them the way it did, but I don't think it matters. I think they're in as long as they beat LSU.
I think so too. I think there are a few teams. By the way, I was just like Googling different stats on Oklahoma as you were talking. They have 41 sacks this year. 41 sacks.
And it comes from all different places. Their edge guys are good. And like R. Mason Thomas hasn't played the last two games and they haven't really missed a beat. But their edge guys are good. Their interior guys are awesome. And I was driving with my son the other day and he's looking at Instagram reels and he's like, "Who's the Oklahoma D tackle with the rec specs?" I was like, "Oh yeah, David Stone." He's a rotation. He's like the third guy in the rotation. And he's like, "Wait, how do you know the third guy in Oklahoma's D tackle rotation?" I'm like, "Because he was a 5-star recruit, son.
Yeah.
He was big time." Yeah. But the two guys in front of him are just so good that he can't. It's not like he's bad. He's really good. It's the two guys in front of him are even better.
If you look at, I'll include Auburn in this early season, the Oklahoma branded games, Michigan, Auburn early. Jump across the middle for a second. what they've done against Alabama, what they've done against Missouri, they look like one of the best teams in the country. And if the committee, and man, I'm about to really put some faith in the committee here. If you really sit down and if we're evaluating in-season injuries, they are only fragile when Mateer is hurt or coming back probably too soon, right? Because he played in the Ole Miss game, but was like obviously a shell of himself, if I recall, because they were getting home on him and he was not moving the way he was previously. When he is healthy, they are hell on wheels for someone in the playoff.
Yeah. And I think the fact that they don't have to play in a conference championship game, like we actually could separate these buckets, like who wants to play in a conference championship game, who doesn't. Like Texas A&M and Ole Miss do because they've never done it before. I think Indiana and Ohio State just want to see each other. Like they want to challenge a little bit. But everybody else is like, no, please let us heal up.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I don't know that Ole Miss, given the situation.
Yeah,
that's true.
And we'll talk about A&M is definitely in that bucket. But the Ole Miss thing. I think going back to Oklahoma. Like I agree. I think Oklahoma's maybe the only 2-loss bubble team right now in the playoff that you could say if they win next weekend, they seem like a lock to be in, mostly because of that win over Alabama and where Alabama stacks.
Well, I think Alabama's one of those teams too, because they have right now the best win that anybody has.
Yeah. The problem with that is, that where they are where the committee has put them in the rankings, obviously number one, and that if Michigan upsets Ohio State, or if
somebody's got to replace somebody.
Big 12 teams, if two Big 12 teams are in, which would mean that that BYU upset Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship. Somebody's got to get replaced. And I'm just looking at the last team is Alabama. The second to last team in the rankings is Notre Dame on the bubble.
Yeah.
I just realized this.
Notre Dame, Alabama would be a very interesting comparison. Now, clearly they've put Notre Dame ahead of Alabama already, but you've got Notre Dame with the 2 losses and the best win is USC. Alabama with the really good wins, but the worst loss of anybody in Florida State.
I just realized all this pro-Oklahoma chatter we're contributing to this morning is going to only complicate this potential Ole Miss situation with a playoff bid even more.
Sure is, Steven Godfrey.
Good times, guys. Great television.
We will talk all about that because our next segment is going to be about the impending Lane Kiffin announcement. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that if you want to see Ross, this is the best beanie Ross has worn since we started.
I broke out the new beanie. Yeah,
I like the one that was
it's so tall.
It is tall.
Oh, okay.
It's the height.
Beanie.
I like the multicolored ones.
Well, if you want to see Ross's beanie, or you want to see Godfrey's sport coat,
it's a cardigan.
Oh, this is your cardigan. I'm sorry. It's a blazer style.
It's cardigan season.
It's a blazer style cardigan, Andy. Sorry, some of us like fashion.
Shawl collar. Went right over my head. All right. Turn on your TV, your smart TV. Look at the home row. Find the Yahoo Sports Network icon. Click that. And you can watch all of the Yahoo Sports Network's offerings, including the College Football Inquirer. Or if you are out and about, on the go, anytime, day or night, use your phone, use your tablet. YahooSports.tv is the address. That's YahooSports.tv. And you can watch all of the Yahoo Sports Network shows. And there are some spectacular ones, including the one you are listening to right now, the College Football Inquirer. So before we move to the Lane Kiffin impending whatever the hell it is, let's go to Atlanta. Pat Narduzzi told us he did not care about the Notre Dame game. He cared about the ACC games. Boy, howdy.
Don't doubt Pat Narduzzi.
Was he right? Pittsburgh jumps out to a 28-0 lead against Georgia Tech. Holds on in spite of Pat Narduzzi losing his mind and calling a fake punt when he really didn't need to call a fake punt. But the Panthers put it away, and they are still alive in the ACC race. And Georgia Tech, which went in needing a win to get into the ACC championship game, is probably out barring a miracle.
Barring some sort of decisive win in clean old fashion, which is, if you know the history of that rivalry, not likely, Bob. This was, don't doubt Pat Narduzzi. We talked about Pitt's ascension these last couple of weeks. This was unbelievable. I thought the backbreaker, how fast did those graphics jump up on the screen about Georgia Tech and comeback games? You didn't feel like it was over at 28-0 because the speed of those scoring drives for Pitt. Then sure enough, boom, we're scoring twice. We're turning the field around. And then Georgia Tech's driving. We're down 2 touchdowns. Still plenty of time left in the game. And man, that pick 6 from Haynes King just felt like an absolute backbreaker. And all of a sudden, it was like Pitt had just enough space to operate with for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I think afterward, as Andy mentioned afterward, Narduzzi said, I think he called himself a dumbass. For the fake
the circumstances of the fake punt were Pittsburgh is up 35-21. They have the ball like their own 45. They call the fake punt. It's actually blocked well. Not a terrible call. The guy who gets the snap happens to get tripped by the turf monster. But Georgia Tech scores very quickly to make it 35-28. And you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Dumbass might have been the right word for that.
Yeah. By the way, just rolling this conversation in the ACC championship game, there are like 14 different scenarios, tiebreaker scenarios in the ACC championship game. We could have Duke versus Miami.
I sent you guys to Duke Miami.
Game. Yeah. We could have Miami, Georgia Tech. We could have Pitt play SMU. I mean, it's crazy. All these different things. Virginia, SMU obviously is the most likely because if they both win, Virginia, SMU both win. SMU's at Cal. Virginia hosts Virginia Tech. Then that's the easy scenario they're both in. But if one of them loses, it kind of creates this deal where Duke can even get in. 5-loss Duke can even get in, or Pitt, if they beat Miami, can get in. Miami, I think, has to have Miami, which may be the best team in the ACC, and may have the best, or certainly probably has the best resume. CFP resume is the highest ranked. They can't get in without, I think, 2 of 3 teams. They have to have 2 of 3 teams lose. SMU, Virginia, and Duke. They have to have 2 of those 3.
Let me give you the cleanest path to a Duke 5-loss Duke in the ACC championship game, and also Miami in the ACC championship. So if you want a Duke Miami ACC championship game, this is how it has to work. Cal has to beat SMU. Duke has to beat Wake Forest. I don't think NC State UNC matters in this, but I have NC State beating UNC because have you watched UNC? Miami needs to beat Pitt. Syracuse and Boston College I don't think matters. And Virginia Tech has to beat Virginia. That's how it happened. Like that is a clean Duke Miami ACC title game based on conference opponent win percentage, because it would be a 6-way tie atop the ACC at 6-2 for Duke, Miami, Georgia Tech, Virginia, SMU, and Pitt.
Yeah, you're right, Andy. The NC State would be in there. They need to win to have, according to like tiebreakers I'm looking at, they need to win to have the
hold on. Let me see what happens if USC wins. If UNC wins.
UNC wins. I think it's Duke Virginia.
If North Carolina wins, it's Duke Virginia.
You guys remember this thing that we used to do called divisions? Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay,
yeah.
just throwing that
Or
out
like
there.
12-team conferences. You play everybody.
Turns out 18 teams stacked in a row who are all mid to high mid don't really perform that particularly well as a product.
It's a stunning
now I'm checking to see if Syracuse and Boston College mean anything.
Andy is.
I don't think so.
If Boston College wins, it makes Duke the number 1 seed.
Show me the Boston College scenario, and then I'm interested.
Oh my God!
let's get the O'Brien Eagles in there.
Golly, it's crazy.
It's something.
If you don't have a favorite tiebreaker site, I recommend bball.notnothing.net. It's a person who created their site, I think, for the Big 12 basketball tournament, just to create a way to figure out what the seeding would be. They've expanded it to football, and they have all 4 power conferences, and you can plug in the results of the games as you want, and it'll spit out exactly what's going to happen.
Can you give that URL?
Yeah, bball.notnothing.net.
Okay, that sounds like somewhere where you should not put your credit card information. I just want to throw that out there, okay?
And they don't ask for it, so they're just wonderful people. Wonderful people. So
all right.
It is so much fun to run the scenarios. The Big 12, Arizona State is still alive, by the way. Maybe later in the show, I'll tell you how Arizona State can get into the Big 12 title game. But when we come back, Lane Kiffin is coaching in the Egg Bowl, and then the next day, he's making an announcement. Did Lane Kiffin say that? No. The Ole Miss athletic director told us that, because that's completely normal in 2025. We'll be right back. We are back at the College Football Inquirer, and we got to talk about this news that came out Friday. Ole Miss didn't play this week, but Ole Miss was the talk
But they
of
got
college
played
football this week. Yeah. So Lane Kiffin, current Ole Miss coach of a team that is probably in the college football playoff, had a meeting with Keith Carter and the chancellor of Ole Miss. Keith Carter is the athletic director, so meets with the athletic director and the chancellor on Friday. It is decided at this meeting that Lane Kiffin will coach the Egg Bowl game against Mississippi State. That shouldn't be something you're actually discussing the week before the game, but it is something they discussed.
Why?
It is then revealed by Keith Carter in this statement that the Saturday after the game, because the game is on Black Friday, the day after, Lane Kiffin will then make an announcement about his future, which will be either coaching Ole Miss, LSU, or Florida. Guys, explain to me how this ends in Lane Kiffin coaching Ole Miss.
Ross, why don't you do the journalism first? I'll scream later.
I think we were talking off air, Andy, actually, before you jumped on, our producer, TJ, was asking that exact question. How does he return? I think Godfrey said it, in any normal circumstances, based on what's transpired, you would think there's no way that he would return.
Yeah.
Except Lane Kiffin is involved. And
correct.
I think that when Lane Kiffin is involved, anything goes. Who knows? And
that's where Godfrey's pro wrestling background helps here.
Yes.
Because there is a scenario where Lane Kiffin does all of this and then gets up and says, I ain't leaving.
Okay. I want to keep it to the coachy part of this, because there's some stuff that happened yesterday morning on game day that I'm writing a column about for the Washington Post. So we'll get to that on Tuesday, and that's where I try not to die of an aneurysm at 44. You guys want a fun? Here's a fun memory lane bit. I remember getting phone calls in the previous Lane Kiffin saga. So 22, help me here.
Yeah,
in my advanced age.
Yes.
Okay.
Auburn. Yeah.
So in the Auburn saga, Ross and I were talking about this before the show. Anytime the data is the data in terms of like, hey, he could have had a chance to do the extension, right? You could have had an Indiana Signetti type moment. We can name 1,000 scenarios where, hey, like Matt Rule in Penn State this year. Like we that is how we are informed to judge coaching searches. Lane Kiffin excels so specifically at keeping every option alive for the purpose of maintaining the maximum amount of attention on himself. He's employed his family members this time as part of this saga. I really, y'all, not a joke, seriously think that he's like side pitching some sort of reality show, like involving the family.
This is a Bravo show. It is the Real Housewives of college football.
So this is where I was going,
Andy. I could see them at BravoCon.
You could see them at BravoCon. This show officially endorses BravoCon.
The daughter, Knox.
Come on the show. Andy Cohen, come on the show and talk. Do you think he's a Mizzou fan? I know he's a Cardinals fan. Anyway, back to the point. I remember receiving 2 phone calls on Thanksgiving of 22 talking about how the check writers at Ole Miss, and I'll get to them in a second, who are currently funding this entire NIL operation, were comfortable and prepared and ready to usher in the Jeff Lebby era at Ole Miss. They were ready to go.
This is in 2022.
This is in 2022. Jeff Lebby, currently head coach of Mississippi State, who will be playing Ole Miss this weekend. And then, of course, if you need more Mississippi State connections, I still love the idea as an alumnus of this very, very strange place in Oxford. The idea of a Yankee who went to State being the interim head coach of Ole Miss in the playoff. I'm talking about Joe Judge, the former Giants head coach. That's my favorite outcome in this city. That's the one I personally want the most. Anyway, I bring the Jeff Lebby.
It's not a far-reaching outcome.
No, sir.
I don't think. Yeah.
No, I'm bringing it up on the show because that scenario has been discussed inside of the walls.
This is not. Like we've talked about this for several weeks now, the Joe Judge thing. And the reason you do that is Joe Judge has the administrative CEO experience, having been an NFL head coach. Because you say, oh, well, why don't you give it to Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator? Because you want him to be able to call his defense. He's
coordinating the defense, right?
Yeah. Charlie Weiss Jr., meanwhile, would be beginning to call the offense because Lane Kiffin calls it now. So these are all things that are on the table if Lane Kiffin says he's going to LSU or Florida.
There's more alignment in that building right now on the defensive side than the offensive side with focusing on the playoff. I'll say that. There's more focus there in terms of there are coaches on that staff who are saying, let's go to either destination that isn't Ole Miss. And then there's coaches on that staff saying, what the hell are we doing? Yeah. I think we can win in the first round. I think we can challenge, depending on how the bracket falls, I think we look good in the quarters and the semis. And so there is division within that staff right now, and it's starting to boil over. But to the point of the original conversation that we're having, Lane is going to keep every option alive. He's just really good at this. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of checking in with people who are sort of media adjacent to each one of these schools and stoking, the possibility. I've covered coaching searches for a very long time. Obviously, the gentlemen here have done the same. There is no search like a Lane Kiffin search because of it really is a sort of pro wrestling element of almost like a sort of narrative fiction that gets built into these things. Most of these coaching searches, and I've done this long enough to I feel like I can be somewhat authoritative. Most of these coaching searches are not as dynamic as people think they are. Most of them are a foregone conclusion. Okay. So maybe, Andy, we can bridge into the conversation of what if John Summerall is coaching Tulane, and why is that different?
Right. Most coaching searches are confirmation bias.
Yes, that's an excellent way to put it, sir. Yes, absolutely.
You've decided who you wanted, and you need to make sure they're not an axe murderer. And once you've made sure of that, you hire them. That's not what this is with Lane.
And if you're an institution that's making that decision, the candidate in question is almost always willing and wanting to go to that said destination, right?
Right.
There's just not that much dynamic intrigue. Whereas here, the goal really has seemed to be to keep all of these options as alive for as long as humanly possible for Kiffin, not for Ole Miss.
It's funny because Jimmy Sexton's his agent, and I think people are blaming Jimmy Sexton for this theater. I do not think that Jimmy Sexton is the cause of this, because Jimmy Sexton has had plenty of clients who are like, okay, I'll stay. Let's sign that extension. This is a Lane production.
Yeah, so
Jimmy Sexton is happy to oblige when his client is pushing the leverage as high as possible. But I don't think this is Jimmy saying, "Hey, Lane, this would be awesome if you did it this way." I think this is all Lane.
I 100% agree, and I said some stuff on Twitter. I want to clarify. This is Lane driving the conversation. This is Lane driving the narrative and building out this intrigue and this kind of reality show stuff that we're joking about. However, Andy, CAA and Jimmy Sexton enjoy a certain apparatus that I think no one else in college football does. I think to listen to, and I'm going to dip a little bit into this before I write the piece for the Post, to listen to Nick Saban stump for Lane Kiffin to enjoy the most agency when Nick Saban himself kicked Lane Kiffin off of his own staff for exactly what's happening right now, back before Lane Kiffin restarted his coaching career after the Saban Reform School, is hilarious. There is a sympathy towards platforming what's best for the CAA client, and Nick Saban is 110% a part of that because of his relationship with Sexton, his relationship with Kiffin. A lot of this is going unchecked, and I'm going to be really curious.
What's different here, though, I will point this out. This is not like, so we've talked about the Alabama search that led to the Mike Norvell extension that Florida State is now dealing with. That is the albatross.
Dan Lanning, Mike Norvell were the two profiteers on that one. Yeah.
Right. And Kalen DeBoer was the guy who got the job.
Yeah. The actual guy who got the contract.
And Nick Saban was the one who left. So Nick Saban, Kalen DeBoer, Dan Lanning, Mike Norvell, all Jimmy Sexton clients.
Magic.
This situation is different because you've got Florida.
Yeah.
So Florida's alternates, Jeff Brom, not a Jimmy Sexton client. Jed Fish, not a Jimmy Sexton client.
This is what I wanted to get into.
John Summerall, not a Jimmy Sexton client. Clark Lee is a Jimmy Sexton client. So, and when I say Jimmy may not be the point man on all of these guys, but he runs the coaching division at CAA. So he will be involved. LSU search. Lane Kiffin is a Jimmy Sexton client. Eli Drinkwitz is not. And I should include his name in the Florida search. Kenny Dillingham is not a Jimmy Sexton client. I'm trying to think of anybody else who might be in the mix at LSU.
I think that's probably a good summation without getting into some particulars that we may not want to put on the mic yet. What's interesting to me is what you're pointing out, which is that I do feel we kind of always felt like, well, the Sexton era can't last forever. And then Saban's retirement kind of felt like a watershed moment in terms of the agency representation in the SEC. Saban has now ascended into essentially the most public position possible for a non-coach, which is sitting on that desk every weekend for game day. But there are Andy, it's possible that 2 or 3 years from now, the majority of SEC head coaches will not be CAA clients. So what's happening now from an agency perspective is very interesting. We're seeing a pretty significant shift. Mike Elko going to the playoff, not a CAA client.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Marcus Freeman, national title game, not a CAA client. We're starting to see a shift here to a little bit more equity. And I do think this is a little bit of the dying of the light. Now, by the way, CAA is fine. They got Kirby. They got Lane. Like, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. I want to clarify
this is a case of you had a bunch of inventory, and it's hard to have that much inventory.
Look,
it's hard to maintain that much inventory.
I don't play a ton of chess, but I know whoever has the most pieces on the board usually has the advantage.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And we're losing, lose a couple pawns. That's fine. Losing rooks, like we're losing knights. Like you still got a queen and a king out there, but it's diminishing for CAA. So to see what I thought was a very clear and organized PR effort on behalf of Lane, and Andy, we saw this already once this year and we all kind of laughed about it. James Franklin managed a magic trick. He's a CAA client, by the way. He managed a magic trick. You can't sit here and tell me something that Franklin claimed he needed at Penn State that he did not receive. Okay?
No.
He went out.
Not since 2022.
No, sir. Preseason number 1 or maybe number 2, I think, depending on the poll. They go out. They have the season that they have. He's fired in season. And, I talked to a lot of athletic directors after that happened, and they all said, hey, it's going to be really interesting to hear James's side. Like, how do you spin this one, right? This is really, really difficult. James, to the credit of his ego, and this is a compliment. I don't want to sound like I'm slighting James Franklin, goes on that desk on College game day, perches up, and by the time he's done, it was almost as if James Franklin was the victim. We're seeing that same mechanism in place for Lane, and this is, to what you originally said, I'm not trying to wave my finger at one agency and say, how dare you? I'd actually like to say that more to ESPN because you're just letting propaganda pass through without checking it, and it's just bad. It's bad content.
See, I have a problem. I don't think this is dirty. This is just business.
Correct. But nobody wants to call it that. This is where I get frustrated, Andy. I'm not mad that it's happening.
Nick
I'm mad that no one's saying it.
Right. Nick Saban saying the calendar needs to change. Cool. Awesome. You find a way to get rid of the semester system because that's the problem.
And those two problems are not connected as much as that attempt wanted them to be. College football's calendar is broken 7 different ways. We talk about it almost every week.
Yeah.
Portal, semester system, the coaching cycle being on top of early signing. The semester system's
the one thing is not changing because it's based around when Christmas is.
Because we're still probably
the entirety of the national population that goes to college.
And we're probably still trying to act like academics are remotely involved in what we're in this sport that we cover.
Yeah.
So the idea of tying this all in and making Lane the victim was masterful PR. And then look, someone I respect tremendously as a human being. I profiled him. Reese Davis goes on there and says, Ole Miss, what's your problem? Let him coach if he's the LSU head coach. Are you kidding me?
That's one of the funnier things is because if you talk to people in the business, you talk to athletic directors, like it's very easy for people outside to say, well, of course you just let him coach in the playoff. You're really going to have the person who's the coach of another team in your conference, in your building, potentially recruiting your own players.
You're not going to do that.
You will never do that.
And by the way, ask Nick Saban if he would have let someone do that.
He didn't let someone do that.
That's my point. Like we're, I don't mind that CAA has built.
He fired somebody before the national championship
games. Like, I don't mind that CAA has built what they've built. And by the way, they also rep media, We have to be transparent. All I want is transparency and honesty. I'm not anti-capitalist. I've used an agent. I know these people. I talk to all these people too. I like money and I want the highest amount of money for my services. But what I can't abide is this idea now that like we're leaning into some of this programming around college football as essentially paid PR. I just need one person on that desk, Andy, to push back a little bit and point out the Kiffin dismissal in the playoffs. And nobody does that. They all just clap and talk about their dogs.
Reese did push back a little bit.
A little bit, but like, come on.
In the segment with Dan Lanning, where Pat McAfee gets Dan Lanning to talk about the grass being greener. As the camera's panning out and they're about to go to commercial, Reese goes, "Why is that so hard for anybody else to say?" It was a shot at Lane Kiffin, so
it's just. I mean, I'm probably asking for something that's silly and not going to happen, but I have always contended that program, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, is. I've written about this for years. It's more important than like we all love like Inside the NBA because like that's great television, right? And there's also the Champions League coverage that's on CBS is so good with Thierry Henry and those guys. Like that's great TV. College Game Day affects the sport more than any television program affects their sport. Like the Fox NFL pregame doesn't affect what's going to happen with the Lions or the Rams or the Eagles. This program does. And you know who started that, Andy? Do you remember the first coach they had on fresh in season after a controversy, after a firing? Lane Kiffin on the tarmac in Tempe. So all I really want
it was
here,
an FBO in Los Angeles. His car was there. Like
FBO. God.
They were home. They got home. His car was there, and he drove
Andy,
home. Like
if you were,
they just left him.
Andy, it wasn't like he was on a Colombian airstrip somewhere in Central America and had to like row a boat back to. If you have ever worked even for 5 seconds or cared about college football in your life, and someone says the word tarmac to you, you think of Lane Kiffin and the Arizona State loss, right? That word is synonymous. None of this has to do with coaching. None of this has to do with football necessarily. I'm just shocked at I just want a little bit more transparency and honesty because it is pro wrestling and it is big business and that's fine. Just don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. That's all I really want from this.
Ross had to step away for a moment because, of course, the news never stops. We'll be back with the whole crew discussing next week, Rivalry Week. You know, the Iron Bowl, the Territorial Cup, clean, old-fashioned hate. And all of the scenarios that are fit to print, because there's a lot of freaking scenarios. We'll talk about it when we come back. We are back at the College Football Inquirer, and we are embarking upon the most wonderful week of every year, not just because we have a holiday that is devoted to giving thanks, eating food, and watching football, but the best college football games of the year tend to populate in this week, and we have a bunch of them. Obviously, guys, we have the college football playoff affecting games. So we have Michigan, Ohio State, where if Michigan wins, Michigan probably in the college football playoff. So plus it would mean they've beaten Ohio State 5 games in a row, which would be incredible. Or Ohio State breaks the streak and takes something away from Michigan, which would also be very dramatic. We have the Iron Bowl, where Alabama goes to Auburn. Auburn has an interim coach. Auburn could crush Alabama's playoff dreams.
All right, we're moving a little bit into fiction, but okay.
Yes.
What? You don't think Auburn has a chance to win this game?
The Fighting Durkins? The Fighting Durkins?
Yeah, man.
Godfrey, can I tell you about the last 2 Iron Bowls at Jordan-Hare Stadium? Remember the one where the Brian Harsin team forced the team with the Heisman winner to go on a miracle drive to force overtime?
What I'm hearing is that Brian Harsin's available and Auburn needs a coach. That's all I'm hearing.
Remember in year 1 of the Hugh Freeze era when Jalen Milroe had to hit 4th and goal from the 31 to win the game?
You know, okay, sure. All right. I think I'm just a little faded on the amount of games with interims that we've had down the stretch.
Have you not watched enough of these games, though, to know that the better team, in this case Alabama, isn't always going to be in the best position come the end of the game?
I feel really confident because of what happened with Oklahoma that Alabama will return to form in this particular Iron Bowl. I'm not discounting the weirdness of this game historically or the rivalry or anything like that. I always run around and have fun with Red River, right? Red River is almost a guarantee that the weaker team entering, maybe not the underdog specifically, but the less talented team or problematic team explodes and wins the game. I would feel very confident. Yes, very much so. Is there going to be a stranger result at the top end of college football when we look back on 2025 than that one?
Well, I didn't mention another game on Black Friday. Texas A&M, Texas.
If A&M just beats the out of Texas, like we're going to look back on Red River, especially if Oklahoma makes the playoff. It's incredulous. Again, it falls into that window that I talked about in the previous segment about Oklahoma having an injured quarterback, and that's the only time they looked susceptible this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so Texas A&M, Texas. If Texas wins, then it gets pretty weird in terms of there's a 9-3 team that might have a case.
Well, and think about this, Andy. That would be 2 wins that Texas would have over 2 playoff teams. Now they have the third. One of their losses is pretty bad. But
the Florida game, yes.
Yeah, the Florida game. But I think having 2 wins over 2 playoff teams vaults them up to certainly on the bubble. And maybe if things break, it seems like it's gonna be hard, but you never know.
And let me make the argument I'm sure Chris Del Conte will make, the athletic director of Texas. Well, we don't have to schedule Ohio State, and if we hadn't, we'd be in the playoff right now. And you know what?
Almost certainly. Yeah.
I don't know that the committee even cares about that, but I think they probably should, because if you discourage scheduling games like that by your actions, you're hurting the sport.
Real quick, if I'm Texas, I need a agenda of a rooting interest this weekend. Obviously, you beat A&M. All right.
Yep.
You want Tennessee to win to beat Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Okay. Where are we going from there?
You want Ohio State to win. You don't want Michigan coming up.
Right.
The works.
You can't have that.
Because you want the quality to stay intact there. This is where I know it goes in a lot of different directions.
You want Auburn to win, I think, right?
I think so. I was going to ask about that one.
Yeah.
But then you get Texas and Alabama compared head to head, and I'm not sure Texas wins that comparison.
Do you want Oklahoma to lose?
Alabama would have 2 really bad losses, though.
Right.
Texas would have 1, and their losses are Texas or Ohio State and Georgia. Yeah, right? On the road.
And Florida.
Both of them on the road.
Florida.
I think they win that head to head. I think I think you need
you want Auburn to win.
Yeah.
Okay, you want Auburn to win. The egg doesn't affect you.
I think you want Oklahoma to win. I think you need Oklahoma to be in the playoffs so you have 2 wins against playoff teams.
Okay, so we want Oklahoma to win. We want Tennessee to win. We want
Actually, you know what? If Oklahoma loses, Texas is going to win that one because of the head to head.
Okay. So we're neutral on LSU Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You really need Tennessee to win. That feels like the most obvious data point.
I think 9-3 Texas might be picked over 10-2 Vanderbilt.
But why have the debate?
They did play.
Why have the debate? And then in the Big Ten, who are you? So you would be up against. You would want Ohio State to win for more than one reason.
Yeah,
you would want chalk in the Big Ten.
You don't need Michigan. Yeah, you don't need Michigan involved.
You don't want Michigan involved. Iowa's out. USC's out. Okay, all right.
I'm not even sure you want a 10-2 Oregon. I think you'd rather just Oregon be in. So
yes. Okay. So I had a Texas fan ask. And also, one of my kids has decided he's a Texas fan, which sounds expensive for me. They're alive because of the resume, but it also feels like they do need 4 or 5 things really to break to push this thing through. But just beat A&M. By the way, just beat A&M.
We talked about the ACC scenarios already, where you could have Duke and Miami, you could have Virginia and SMU. Virginia SMU is your most likely ACC championship game. But there are still a lot of where Pitt's still involved. There's different ways it can go. The Big 12 is not settled yet either. If you thought BYU beating Cincinnati on Saturday night was the end of things and it's just going to be a Texas Tech BYU rematch, it's not necessarily. So in the mix still, Arizona State, Utah, Texas Tech, BYU. Utah is mostly out because it has lost to Texas Tech and to BYU. But there are some narrow scenarios where they get in. There is one very simple scenario where Arizona State can get in, which if you just said when Sam Leavitt got knocked out for the season that Arizona State will be in it the final day of the season, I would have said you're insane. And I would have also nominated Kenny Dillingham for National Coach of the Year, which he still may deserve it. So,
yes,
go ahead, God.
No, I was gonna say all the talk about coach openings. If even if this doesn't happen, Kenny Dillingham just feels like he's being slept on in the casual. Let's throw a name out. This guy has experience in the SEC. I know he's at his alma mater right now, but that hasn't stopped a lot of people at their alma mater.
I
from looking for
believe
jobs.
all of the teams have inquired.
Yes,
but I believe everybody's inquired.
He's made it. I believe that too. But he's made it pretty clear that multiple times that he does want to stay. And I know that we have seen that from coaches in the past, but he does seem like he's going out of the way to say, like, I'm not going anywhere. And I think people have inquired and not talked to him.
Yeah. We had the news that, we had the news at On3 that Sam Leavitt is likely to enter the transfer portal.
Yeah.
If Sam Leavitt enters the transfer portal, I think that probably changes your math if you're Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah. I would state on the mic that Kenny Dillingham does not want to have to leave. But I think that
makes sense.
I don't know if Arizona State is necessary. Give you an example, right? Ole Miss is saying we're going to try and match financially toe to toe the LSU's and Florida's of the world. I don't know if maybe we have that. Here's the word of the week: alignment in Tempe right now.
Yeah, I don't think they can do that. So
no,
pay attention to that. But here's what has to happen. So if Arizona State beats Arizona in the Territorial Cup, that's your Friday night, Black Friday late game. I believe 9 p.m. Eastern time is your kick. 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Then you would need TCU to beat BYU. I'm sorry, UCF. UCF to beat BYU.
UCF, yeah.
UCF would have to beat BYU. That would trigger it.
Oh, okay. That feels a little harder to do.
It is a lot harder.
I thought it was TCU.
Yeah. It is UCF. It's UCF.
Yeah, I forgot. Okay. Yeah. That's going to be a stretch. Yeah, I mean, it feels like we're bound for the BYU, Texas Tech. And then the question is, if BYU wins, probably both of them are in the playoff. But if Texas Tech wins, you would think so. And because I don't think Texas Tech's going to drop out. I mean, they'll go on the road and be like the last at large in probably, but I don't think they drop out. But the Big 12 will argue they both should be in no matter what, of course.
Ross,
problem is BYU doesn't have a very good win outside of the lead.
If the Cougs in that scenario bracket bust, so they beat UCF, they go to Dallas, they beat Texas Tech. Who? Everyone's going to ask at whose expense?
Yeah, because Ross, you sent us a chart of your bubble teams and everything.
Yeah.
They would be in over Alabama. That's not happening.
It would be. Yeah, it's going to be a debate over, basically over Alabama or Notre Dame. I mean, that's it. It's Alabama, Notre Dame compared to Texas Tech, and oh man, that's going to be.
And Alabama's below Notre Dame right now, so it would be Alabama.
Right. And it would almost certainly be Alabama.
I can tell you how that story ends right now.
Here's the thing, though, and we just spent some time talking about this. There are three teams that are not bubble teams. There are 3 teams in the SEC going on the road for rivalry matchups. One of those 3 teams is probably losing. Like the odds just say one of those 3 are you losing. Texas A&M, Alabama, or Ole Miss. Like one of them are probably going to lose that game.
Yep. Yeah.
And so then you start to get some jostling after that happens.
And I think the most likely losers would be Texas A&M or Alabama. And if Texas A&M loses, it doesn't really affect them. It does create the entire scenario we talked about with Texas. If Alabama loses, it changes a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, Iron Bowl might be the most intriguing game.
All right, fine.
Of the week.
Well, hey,
unless
I don't know. There's a pretty intriguing one, Andy, in Stark, Vegas, and I got rerouted from Michigan, Ohio State, to covering the Egg Bowl for the first time in like over a decade that I've covered the Egg Bowl. So I'll be in Starkville. Maybe I'll just make the drive to Auburn after that. It's not that far.
You should. It's an easy drive. Yeah, Ross, reunion week for Auburn. I'll be in Ann Arbor because here's the thing. Last year, I'm like, there's no chance Michigan beats Ohio State. I'm going to Texas A&M. And I sat at a Texas Roadhouse in College Station, Texas, and watched Michigan beat Ohio State. and then on the side of the road did the highest traffic instant reaction video we did all year. And so Ari and I said, we are going to Ann Arbor if that game is for a playoff spot for Michigan, and we're going to Ann Arbor.
You just secretly made so many Texas fans happy because you talked about being in College Station and the only place you could go was a chain restaurant on the side of the road. That was like College Station shade.
Godfrey,
that was great.
College Station has many fine restaurants. You're an idiot if you try to go to like a famous local restaurant on the day of the biggest game of the year. I go where I can find a seat on game day, preferably where there's a television. So
comfortable shoes too.
So shout out Texas Roadhouse and all those rolls. Many rolls were consumed that day. We got to go Tuesday. We'll set you up for these games. Plus more carousel talk, hot carousel talk.
BYU over Bama. It's going to happen.